Public affairs commentator Charles Idehod joins us now to discuss this further. Good morning to you and thank you for joining us.
Morning, Charles. Nice to see you.
Yeah, many spokespersons from the southeastern part of the country have said that too late, or is not even enough. What do you think, first off?
Well, I think we should applaud this directive because it's taken about 47 years.
47 years.
47 years. I mean, that's a long time in the history of the country for an injustice to be righted. Because when you take a look at it, when it happened, these soldiers unfortunately found themselves at the other, on the other side, not because they wanted it, but because circumstances of the war, the secessionist movement, brought them to that area. So, and they had no other option than to fight on the side they found themselves. So, when in 1970, January precisely, when the war came to an end, a healing process, began. You remember the three R's?
Exactly.
So the three arrows came to body: reconciliation, the reintegration, and then the reconstruction. So we expected that as at that time, beginning from there, that the reconstruction will begin, the reintegration will begin, and then the reconciliation will be. But for 7 years after, we're still talking about people who served in Biafran. It was no choice of theirs. So I think rather than vilify the current administration, we should be applauding it for taking that political way, having political way to be able to bring this to bear. That's how I see it.
All right. Some analysts have said that it took too long, and the damage was already done.
Yes.
We saw that in the Second Republic under Shehu Shagari. If I'm picking Dr. Alex Ekweme as his running mate was part of the reconciliatory process. But after that time, we didn't really see tangible and really deliberate efforts to reintegrate and reconnect with the
Yes, it's also that's also one of the downsides of the successive government, because when it happened in 1970, you can also look at it that not only these police officers served, you also had civil servants. Soldiers who served, but civil servants were reabsorbed into the Nigerian state. But these ones were kept, we just kept away out of the whole system. So we're too long, but whose fault? It's not this current administration's fault, because you have had successful government. As you said, they had their son, the Igbo son, as the number 2. So I expected him to have championed the cause of that reconciliation. But as you always find in Nigeria, everything's a proportion. When people get in there, rather than fight for the welfare of everybody's talking about self. So that could have been responsible for why Ekweme, who was number two is a powerful position that anybody could
in the presidential system,
especially. But what did he do? He didn't do that. You've had even over time Igbo sons and daughters having very powerful positions in government.
Even in this republic, we saw in the beginning from 1999, we saw all the Senate presidents during under President Olusegun Obasanjo.
We all Igbo. The 5 eastern states had a shot at it. You started with the Weremu, you remember the advance and advance, whether it had an S or not. Then you had the Chuba Akadibo, the eloquent Chuba Akadibo. You had the what's his name now, the Wabara. And then you had Ken Namani. They all had they all had a shot at it. You expected that they could have done something, but they didn't do. So I think, well, it's too late, but coming right now, I think it's even Matthew Day, who is the chairman of the Association of the Retired the affected police officer. He was very happy on Friday when they flagged it off. So he said, well, though it's very low, but at least there is something coming to that at the end of the day. So I think we should applaud.
Yeah, but coming at this time, that it seems quite clear somehow that all is not well between the government of the day and the southeastern part of the country. That's then after doing all that, you're now saying that you want to pay pension to police officers that had been pardoned since the administration of former President Olusegun Obasanjo. So why now that you have yielded the stick for too long, now you're wielding a very small carrot in their faces? What about the soldiers that served as well?
Well, I think we need to start from somewhere. You don't just raise a mansion overnight. There are processes. I remember when I was working on the island, Lagos Island, there's a particular building on the marina. All right, where it's about 30-something floors. But when they started, first of all, dug deep. before they started rising, before raising the building. So I'm sure the federal government must have dug deep now. So what we are seeing is just foundation. So when we give, well, let's just give it a shot. I think they started doing something. So it is when they relent before media like us cannot start shouting why this, why that. I'm sure, but starting just start something. If you traveled to a place called Oji River in Anambra State, it has a boundary between Anambra and Enugu State. Yeah. You find that when you drive along that, there's a portion where you had these amputees who were military men, ex-military men, and they are practically beggarly. They beg on a daily basis. That has become their zone, and that is poor. It's a sorry sight.
That was why I asked that question, because most of them are there.
So
that's where they live.
They have started. They said there's a batch. There's going to be other batches. So this one now concerns the police officers. In the course of time, maybe another year, another 6 months, I don't know, we might be hearing about the issue of the military.
All right, let me read this statement by the Movement for the Actualization of Sovereign State of Biafra, the MASOB. Yes. They're saying that even if the federal government constructs the second Niger bridge, dualize all roads in the east, and steps down for an Igbo man to become president, it cannot change the demand for the state of Biafra.
It can. It can. I come from the South, for instance. A time there was in the past, in our history, that everyone in the South believed that we're all marginalized. Even also we're in Lagos, we thought we were marginalized back home. We're saying, but is there any time in this country that a Southerner can ever rule this country? That was where you had the issue of resource control. Remember resource control? Everybody talking about. But all of a sudden, by sheer providence, you had a Jonathan coming as the president. What happened to resource control? What happened to all the agitation? Everything went down by default. So what I'm saying is that because since you feel that in Nigeria, rather than you have the institution being played up, it is the individual. I tell you, and this is prophetic, if an Igbo man rises today to become the president of the country, all this agitation will die down naturally. Wow. Because they feel, oh, our son is there. Our son is there.
But when
until he leaves, then all agitations will begin again. It was when Jonathan
left that you just saw this.
Exactly. But when Jonathan was there, really, many expected things to change, you know, for the better. Yes, but yeah, but that aside, anyway, Chief Nina Nwodo,
what's his name? Ohaneze
Ndigbo, said that, yes, it's quite commendable what the president has done, but it has not addressed the marginalization of the Igbo people in any way, that there is a lot that needs to be done. But will the government do it? That's the question. Do you agree?
But whoever thought that for 7 years after, this government would do this? I personally, as a media man, I practically forgotten anything about this issue of pension for retired police officers or retired anybody. But for coming this time, for 7 years after, to now come up, you dust the files, I think that we should applaud it. It's little, but it is something to start with.
Okay, so can we say that the Biafra call now has become a political tool, kind of?
But the thing is that the question I say, those who are even agitating for a sovereign, do they even know what it means? That's the question. Where is Nnamdi Kanu today? Where is Hazurike? Hazurike is no longer talking about the issue of.
Well, IPOB is still talking anyway.
IPOB is talking, but how have they been? Are they articulate? That's the question you have to ask. Because when you're talking about actualizing if you're talking about a sovereign state, let's travel down South Africa. Mandela was removed from the system, but they didn't stop the agitation. These people were facing they were facing all the tanks and so on because they knew what they wanted. Mandela was in prison for how many? 27 years, but he didn't stop the agitation. But now Nkanu is out of the system. Everybody has gone to Ariada market, gone back to Tanja, and all of them gone back to the market. That is no way to agitate.
Talk to us about the abandoned property phenomenon. Yes. You remember what happened that time? A lot of people are still saying that, well, that issue has not been addressed. And if it is not addressed, then it is still part of the problems, of the agitation.
I quite agree, because but in the West here, a lot returned back. I mean, Ojukwu got his father's property back. I'm sure a lot of them also, Zeke, they got theirs back, and all of them.
Prominent personalities.
Yeah. Well, I know none of any record where the everyday person has said he has not received. But I know in Port Harcourt, the preponderance of the seizure happened in Port Harcourt. I mean, I went to do a story on Ikwere, for instance, where I was told, I was very curious, what's the meaning what's the meaning of Rumu? Rumola, Rumu, Kurusi.
Yeah, exactly.
There's so I was told that it was, in the beginning it was Umu Igbo, which is Igbo settlement.
Okay.
You know, but after they left, the Aro found this way they are making Rumu. Okay. What is the meaning of Rumu? But Rumu also is just like a settlement. So just to be able to differentiate between the Igbo language and the Kwere language. So the Rumu found its way into the dictionary. So the same way it is. When they left, during the Biafran War, the Igbos, you know, the Potako he had heavy Igbo presence. So they all let it. So it is when we want to do is talk that the southeast, no, the south especially. That's where we should focus our attention on. Yes, and as I said earlier, it's a process. You know, a process matures over time. So right now that something has started happening, maybe that's the second phase we have to be talking about.
Shouldn't that be an internal issue anyway? Since South and Southeast were together.
Even
now they are integrated.
It's integrated. So rather than cast the stones at the center, they should be casting the stones at Amechi not Amechi, what's it? Wiki, and then Governor Udom and the rest of them. Exactly. There is also because they are culturally fine. There's the cultural affinity between the South and the Easterner. The mode of dressing, the cuisine, the everything, they have culturally fine. So the integration should actually start down there rather than go up north.
Well, talking about healing and reintegration, really, I know a lot has to be done, but what can really be done? You mentioned earlier on that if you have an Nnamdi become the president of Nigeria today, all this agitation will die down. But keeping that aside, because that doesn't address the real issue, what will really be on the table that will ameliorate all of these agitations here and there that is not necessarily political?
Well, I think we can't shy away from politics because everything, there must be a political solution to all this because politics costs in the first place.
But it won't engender that deep-seated peace everyone wants among Nigerians to promote unity and diversity of the country. Because if you said, okay, just to appease you, take this. After you get satisfied, you look for something else, and then you whip up sentiments again, and then you're back to square one.
If you just look at the configuration of Nigeria, look at the way the everyday people live. Go to K2, very close to us here. Look at the way the integration is there. No, without anybody writing any code of ethics. You find the Igbo man, the Yoruba man, the Hausa man. They live together. Okay, let's even go to entertainment. You find the Igbo people in Yoruba films. You also find even in the music industry, you have flavor. For instance, you have Fino and Olamide, who is a Westerner. They're collaborating and then they're doing well. Nobody talks about whether it's Igbo music. You find Olamide singing Yoruba, you find Fino singing Igbo. Everything is going. I mean, we're all applauding it. How come it's not happening in this political system? Because politics caused that problem. Okay. So we need a political solution to be able to get out of the quagmire.
Well, we have to leave it here right now. Thank you very much, Charles Ideho, for coming on the program this morning. Thank you so much. Thank you.